Welcome back. If you have been joining us, we had some technical difficulties, and I think we have fixed everything. And this is part two of reviewing the Art Finals illustrations. So we will be giving a moment here for people to join in and get back into the live stream. And then we will be continuing looking at the images. Of course, this is recorded so people can go back and watch it later if they need to. But I have Francois' image back here in Photoshop. We've been talking about that.
Yeah,
And
I was talking about it and nobody heard me talking about it.
yeah,
So,
like
yeah.
the value scheme here, the black and white version. I mean, you've worked in black and white to color before, right, Anna?
Yes.
And it is never as straightforward as you think it should be.
Nope.
Nope.
It is.
So, like, this black and white is nice, but it doesn't take into account, like, the natural color of things and the saturation of colors that affects how bright it perceives to be. Like, her form shows up really well in the black and white because there's so much of this lit area around her, but we don't really have that in the final. So yeah, I'm thinking we probably need to be putting some more attention down there, developing some of the dragon eggs, maybe adding some more light coming in through those so they read a little better. And then see about just adding some more of that scene out to that right side so that it's not so right side heavy. Yeah. I was eating chips. I was about to start eating chips again, but that would sound terrible on the audio, so I won't. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, I was saying, meanwhile, nobody heard me, but I was saying it was a really good approach if he wants to go for that MTG artist's style. And I like the more pushed color in the version you drew for him as well.
mm-hmm.
And maybe for the eggs, make them also a little bit more understandable as dragon eggs. Make it have scales or many different colors. They can be shiny, like there's a little liquid on top of them. So yeah, play a little bit around with that it doesn't look like rock only. And I asked, what would you do differently? Because you went now for the MTG version. If he wants it to be more realistic looking, if it was that style, just maybe a quick note or something quick you can say on what to do differently than the approach you just showed us before the stream went down.
How to approach it differently?
Yeah, because you did the overpaint and it was a little bit more in this illustrative
Mm-hmm.
MTG style, but he also has this other reference, which is more a realistic lighting
Oh,
with
right,
realistic
right.
colors. What or how could he do that on this painting? Maybe there is a way to show us in a minute or two.
Yeah.
Because I would be just simply interested in how to differently approach these two styles.
I was kind of thinking about that egg there if you gave it a little more pop from the light down there. Yeah, if it's more realistic, then we've got to treat this. We've got to get better realistic lighting on this, which is we're not going to have anything black that is not immediately next to the camera. This kind of works. So we've got to be getting rid. Oh, that's still at 40%. This figure like can be dark, but only in the occlusion shadows are you going to really be getting close to anywhere near actual black. So we need to be brightening up a lot of this. And we also need to be thinking a bit more about the way this is lit. Like, we're not going to have side light on that arm. There's no way for side light to get on that arm. It's just going to be lit from the top. So this is going to be lit. I'm just kind of thinking about the shadow across a lot of this. First thing that I would want to do is establish what the shadow pattern is between light and shadow with the torch in this location. Because a lot of this is actually going to be in shadow, and the stuff being lit is going to be very orange, because a really tinted light source like you have with a torch, like a fire, it is not carrying all wavelengths of light, which means that it cannot produce all colors because it doesn't have all the wavelengths in it. Only white light can produce all colors. And nothing on her can really exceed the brightness of the source. So everything else on her is going to be muted down a good deal. And it's only really shiny things, like maybe the egg, that is going to be getting more bright. You might have like a specular light kind of hitting the egg. And then if you do want that side light, you can have it, but on her it needs to be minimal and probably slightly more to the violet side. And that wouldn't be a bad idea because it would allow you to pull out some of those forms. A lot of this is just going to be, it's not going to be well lit, so we're going to just play with that. Yeah, the torch light is just not going to be capable of like rendering violets very well because that wavelength just doesn't hardly exist in torch light. And so we've got to be more stringent on some of the rules of light and color like that if we're going to go more of a realistic approach. We would have some bounce up in there. Maybe not a lot. We'd have some up in there. Kind of taking it more of this tone. And with him, we're doing the same thing, right? We're going to be getting more nuanced. We're not going to have much of that light there. We might be working more with terms of atmosphere. And he's going to become more of just kind of a shape back there. You're not going to be able to make out much detail because there isn't going to be enough direct light on him to bring out that detail. And if he is picking up light, then because of his scales, it is likely to be more of a specular light rather than this general flat sort of light that you're getting on it, right? So like right now, it would just be more like these little bits of kind of bright reflections that are kind of coming off of the scales at just the right angle rather than treating it more matte. And we probably want to use basically just the cool light to tint. He's basically going to be treated in the cool light. She'll be in the warm light. And develop more with that top light that you have up here. Try to use it to tell more of the form. See if we can get some more interesting shapes there. don't be afraid of suggesting detail. You don't have to render everything. And then, and if you're not going to really do more with the eyes, if they're not really going to be flaming up, then we might change those. I mean, they could even go into just being dark. Don't necessarily have to have glowy eyes. You could just have the light kind of hitting around the where the eyes are, so that would be more realistic. Again, sometimes it's more powerful about what you don't show than what you do show. Then you could have, like, the mouth could actually be darker, and then you could have kind of a difference of value between that and the body, so that it feels like the head's kind of coming forwards from the body a little bit. It would take some work to kind of mess around with that and see about taking it a more realistic route. It would need to be more nuanced, and it would be working in larger forms of, like, whole areas being lighter and darker. And the wings back there basically would just be tones. Thinking in terms of big tones.
Yeah, it's a really completely different approach, and you don't have the other layer anymore because you had to close everything, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but when he goes back in the video or put up the other video and compares these two, I think it's really cool to analyze a little bit the difference in color schemes that you chose for those different approaches. And yeah, you can learn a lot from that.
Yeah, anyway, you know, and sometimes you just make it small, see how it's reading. And I would say be trying to get more out of the dragon in terms of forms, the overall roundness of the different pieces. Don't worry about the scales and stuff. If you can tell the forms well, then they'll work on a really small scale and not need detail. And that would be ideal, because a lot of detail would be down in her. That's where a lot of the visual interest would be. And then his is more suggested. You know, just get like glints of light on stuff. Yeah. Okay, we got to be moving on. All right, closing that one. Next one we're going to be taking a look at is St. Giles. Nicholas, I guess, is next. Let's pull that up. Nicholas says, extremely busy work week. Squeezed every hour I could, but could not finish up everything. That's okay. No, we just check in at this point and see where to go. I'm quite happy with where the image is going, and most of what's left now is rendering stuff. Still want some feedback. Did not end up painting the guards, included a sketch of them. So we have the little sketch up here of what the guards will look like, but they haven't really been rendered out yet. So, okay, with this one, again, not a major change from the sketch. Where the sketch right over there towards the upper right. And so we had just talked about last time maybe developing the staircase a little bit more, giving it some bits of architecture, and then maybe adding in another set of stairs, kind of extending the distance of the scene, so it's not basically just foreground, background dragon, and then that's sort of it. And then we also talked about maybe limiting the light so that it's basically a shaft of light coming down, and it's not just hitting everything in the foreground exactly the same. So on this one, we both were a real fan of the original sketch that he sent in. What do you think about what he's done with it so far, and then maybe some ideas of how to do even more with it?
Yeah, I think the depth of the painting has improved a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
he makes very, very good use of the stairs and the people that are all having the same colored clothes. And so we understand that they are all supposed to be white clothes. And the further they go into the background, the more this color turns darker. So it's a very nice scale for us, also with the size of the person, the people. Maybe the one in the front can be even scaled up a bit more. She seems a little bit small compared to the others. So the
Mm-hmm.
dark one, which would give us even more, feeling for the scale of things here. Also, how big the people, how tall the people are, and yeah, but that's already basically all when he continues rendering, I think. What's always nice, what he had in his sketch before, I would put back in on the character that is in the middle, with this really bright white. When you have that, then you have sometimes this bloom around when you have super white clothes and the light is shining strongly on it. You have such a like little blooming around the edges. So this is what it looked a little bit also like in the sketch first, and I like that. Maybe he could add this in, and maybe adding a little bit of atmosphere, so like particles or something, because by now it is super clean air. Having a little ray of light or particles or anything like that would push it a little bit even more into a realistic, into a realistic approach. What do you think? Am I talking nonsense?
No, not at all. I'm with you. Having a little atmosphere, there's usually some sort of dust, and especially in a scene that you've established that there's a lot of sand and there is wind blowing because it's moving that banner. I was curious about you mentioned the size of the character, so I've just moved this up a little bit, and let's just play a little determine the size of the character game, and I'm gonna make this up here. So we have a foreground character, and we're going to say that this is our normal size character. We're basing everything on this character. Well, this character is off of the ground a little bit. So if we're going with this is ground level, but they're that many steps up. So if they were actually that far forwards, they'd be right about there, which means that we got to take that much off of the top. So they'd be about that tall. Okay, so we then have our perspective. Our eye level is right about where their eye level is, right around here, which means that we can align the bottom of their bodies and the top of their bodies in check. I'm assuming that this person's feet is right around here. This form goes there. And that means that I can run these two. Actually, I'll run it from the middle. That'd be the safest place to check. So I'm running it from the middle bottom of this person to the middle bottom of that person. And then I'd go through the top of their head. And then at the same point, this going up, that's where the top of their head should be. So you were right. He's about one head length too short, which is fine if the foreground person, the child. But assuming that they're the same size, then he ought to be a bit taller. There you go. A little walkthrough of that. Okay, a couple of things on these characters. I like that they're wearing white. I like that they're all wearing white. Keeps it consistent, and that nice pop of high value is nice. But it's unrealistically defined. Like, there's no indication of arms or legs or any kind of sashes or how it doesn't indicate a form at all. Is it literally like, I mean, because right now it looks like one of those ghost costumes where you just get a white sheet and you hang it over your head, right? Because it has no seams, belts, holes, anything. So we want to give a little indication of that maybe these a couple of pieces of white fabric, or it's fitted or hemmed or something. In the least, what we want to do is say that the wind that's affecting the banner, and this is a fairly large, heavy banner, is also going to be affecting the direction of these, so that what you're going to get is on this side, on the left side, it's going to be hugging against the form of the character on the inside, and then on the right side, it's going to be blowing out. You're probably going to have something more in that line, kind of like that, and that's going to be blowing around. Now, is it individual pieces? Is it one big unit of an unbroken white fabric? Are they wearing white fabric under the main drippy piece? I don't know. So the artist has to define that. But that would give you some more motion with it, to have kind of these kind of blowing off to the side. And yeah. A couple of other things is, yeah, with the air, it could be good just to have some particles. And these are really, really big particles. There we go. Something smaller. We need to put some particles in the air and just sort of break up the complete black and have a little haze of particles going around the scene. Dust bits. Okay, other things. Oh, I was thinking on his head that we could get a more interesting face if we just change this up a little bit. Like, his mouth line is very simple, and I feel like we could probably get like that to come down, and then just try to vary up kind of what this shape is, so it keeps the same general shape. Maybe it even goes up at the end there. We just wanted a more interesting set of angles going on here. And that, I was like, I mean, it's not a big change, but I just think that makes him look more interesting, is to have a variety of different sizes. Because right now, like, every one of these is about the same size, about the same angle, all going the same way. But if you change it up so that one's kind of going off one way, one goes off the other way, and then we're using that direction of small, medium, and large shapes. Yeah. Nicholas says, yes, indeed, characters have been through literally almost zero, though they're quite just placeholders. Like the idea of the wind catching, that would add some movement. Yeah, the cloaks catching the wind, that could be really nice. And with this, I was thinking of, like, the eye. We could really develop this more. This is where we're connecting to this, I assume he's practically a supernatural being. But we want to also look at the way that the shapes work around his eye. That it's still a sphere, and we want to treat it as something that is going around a sphere. And we're looking at images of like crocodiles and lizards to kind of see how those shapes work, how they fold back into each other. We might even get a forward angle on the front part of that, and then a little top angle there. These are some really minute changes, small changes, minute changes, but this is where we are connecting with this main character. So I feel like a little work with some of those shapes could come off nicely. Again, like this is the basic idea, but there is a more interesting set of forms that we could use there. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, this one definitely. Maybe we're going to get to this, maybe not, I don't know. But we got to make sure that the shadow is, when it gets to the step, it's really just kind of going up and down. It's when it gets to the flat part of the step that it jumps over. So as long as it's like that. So we got to have the shadow stepping up the steps. All right, doing that sort of thing. And then the other thing is what is the shadow, the secondary light, which becomes what is the shadow light. I'm going to suggest that if you like these images, that we're going to push this even further so that the sand is, I don't think that, is that grabbing the right color? There we go. The sand is almost going to be white. And then the rest of this is going to be maybe even more faded out. I'm going to do a hard light layer, partial opacity, partial more opacity than that. But then that would mean that anything in the shadow is going to be taking on the color of the shadow and of the secondary light, in this case the sky, so that we could easily have a nice bright sort of violet, which is the actual sky color. And this would keep it from just being the same sort of red everywhere. We could actually get into having some nice sort of blue cool tones there in the shadows. Or they could be warmer. I mean, it doesn't really... Yeah, you can slide it which direction you want it to go. But right now, we're basically just getting darker versions of what the thing actually is, and that's not quite how it would behave. We would get this sort of thing where the light bounces off and it reflects back onto an object, is going to double the warmth of that object. So like on the underside of here, we would be getting a lot of heat warmth from the light bounce back up on it. But in the shadow side, we would be getting the blue light from the sky. And I assume this would actually have a bright blue sky. Then the area being directly hit by the sunlight is basically going to be white. And the same thing goes on them, that they would have... This guy's almost all in shadow, so he would just be more like this. He would too. And then when he gets down into the light, then the light warmth sort of hits along that edge, and then that basically goes white. So, yeah, a lot of places where you can pop in a lot of colors there if you want to get away from just the analogous color scheme. You can have like the cool light here. Yeah. So, thoughts on that, Anna? How's that working for you?
It's a really, really beautiful piece. I hope he will upload it on Facebook group when he's finished with this one. So there are quite a few options you showed now, and I'm looking forward on which one he will go for.
Yeah, and those two totally different ways to do it. You can really play up that cool dichotomy of the warm and cool, or you can do it more like this one down here, which is everything is just that warm stone color. And just remember, anytime that something is being directly lit, it's probably not going to be this saturated. It's probably going to be more like this. If it's really high key value, it's probably going to be a little more desaturated because it's getting so close to white. But it's on the areas that has the color bouncing back up on it that's actually going to be warmer. So maybe like down in areas like that is when it would get warm, that it has some light bouncing back on it, and the underside of this, and then we'd have like the warmth on these back in here. Those would be extra warm, maybe on those rocks back there and up underneath there. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Nicholas, beautiful piece. I've really enjoyed just looking at that the whole time, and I'm looking forward to see what you do with it. Says, oh, well, that is what I have been sort of trying, some variations of colors, but I'm way too shy with it. Oh, Nicholas, you know what? I'm going to put out on the Facebook group this photo that I came across that shows that lighting. That's what I had in mind. I didn't think to go get it. But I'll put it out there, and you take a look at it. And then it should give you the boldness to really just go grab those colors that you're looking for. That's also kind of a theme today, is finding the color and just going for it. Okay, still not feeling the pose, but I want more of a holy warrior that believes in his magic protecting him over a standard knight ready to slay with a sword. Okay, well, the narrative like that, of course, all has to be said visually. And the reposing of the knight, I feel like maybe I didn't explain that adequately. The first knight, the first version you did, he was kind of, I mean, like that's okay, but it felt pretty passive. And this isn't the same. I'm just going to say that when you're reworking it, make sure that you're doing it in the right steps, because I'm almost getting the impression that you are drawing it, but you're not actually drawing an accurate pose first. And you always want to draw an accurate pose and then add all the attire and the clothing and the accoutrements on top of that. But you've got to make sure that that pose is good to begin with. So, you know, coming up to a place like this, And this pose, I mean, it's close enough to use this. And so you're looking at it and saying, okay, well, I've got my head here, and I might treat it like a box because I want to be able to see the back angle on that. And then I have that shoulder here. I'm looking at the volume of the chest. And then I've got the arm, and we can kind of do okay, well, there's a cylinder here. And then there's another cylinder here. And I'm thinking in terms of the volume, and I could think of this maybe as a block down here to another block for the hips. And then I've got that for the head. And then I'm looking at the volume of the hand. And then I'm still looking up at that. So that's a cylinder that I'm looking up at. Modified cylinder. Modified cylinder. And I'm working through. And so once I have... I didn't mean to have that one. Yeah. Once I have that, then I can start coming along and going, okay, well, I want to put an armored plate right here. Then I need a shoulder piece to go over that. And it's just like dressing a doll. But you've got to have that doll body. Otherwise, it's just like trying to put the clothes together, but there's no frame to actually hang it on. And so then we start adding in all of your stuff to it after we make sure that we have an accurate pose. And that should help you out a lot more. The other thing is, if we want to give the idea that the magic is protecting him, we visually have to show that. We have to show like some sort of shield being, a pattern of runes in the air, protecting him, going around him that are the same color as his sword. Or we got to have like light coming off of, of the sword of his sense of his magic, like coming off of that to go up and around him. Or we have the entire ground that he's standing on. There's like a ring of light coming up around him like that. So that should help as well. What was your thoughts? Where were you thinking about taking this, and what would you advise, Anna?
Yeah, I also, when I read the description, my very first question was, why does he have a sword? So if you want him not to be a sword fighter, then don't give him a sword. Give him a book with, I don't know, some signs on it that glow and that make a protecting globe around him that is made out of magic energy or anything like that. So I feel like he was not thinking through first what he really wants to show. And then just went for something and changed his mind maybe later on in the process. I mean, it might be different, but it's just my feeling that I get when I see what he painted and what he then wanted to tell us with his painting. And first have the concept and think about what does he need to show us what you want to tell with this painting. Is he fighting with the dragon? Is he running away from the dragon? Is he a magician? Because he has armor from his toe to up to the shoulders. Why is he then a magician? Magicians usually don't have that full body metal armor. It just makes not so much sense to me. They're having other ways of being protected with shields out of magic. It's not making sense to me. So when he gave us the sketch, I was like, okay, he's a sword fighter, a dragon attacking him. Just make him a little bit more active in his pose, ready to strike, and then he's good to go. But now he changed it completely, and that threw me off a lot, to be honest. Yeah, and other than that, the same as you. Anatomy, there's no... The legs, for example, are completely different in thickness. The armor looks not like it's sitting on the body. It's, get the anatomy, get the base, do maybe more not so ambitious pieces, but maybe something where you go slowly about it, construct things, think through it, have an idea what you're going to show, and yeah, commit to it then, and not try a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and in the end they don't fit together. So
Yeah, it's
more
normal then
commitment.
to change up your idea though as you get into it. Maybe you realize things that you didn't that you thought were going to work one way end up not working that way. We all do that. We all have to make adjustments as we go. Um, but for you, um, yeah, I think the main thing is we do have to have an accurate guy here. That this one looks like you weren't really sure who he needed to be. Just kind of rushed through the rendering of him, and let's just make sure that you take the time necessary to get him right. Because if he's not right, it really doesn't matter too much how well the rest of it is handled. So we want to make sure the attention is put on there. And I kind of find it a little odd that the dragon, which is fairly complicated as far as like it's a big skeleton that glows from the inside and it's dark and stuff, and like that's actually working pretty well. But yet it's like the normal human dude is what you're having trouble with. It's just usually the other way around. So yeah, that's going to be a big thing. Otherwise, like on this, we just need to start developing more of the scene, like the general layout, the general pose, the general part about it is working. But it's coming in here and doing things like developing more on these rocks, so they're not just black. Like Anna mentioned, black is flat. There's no way to indicate form, distance, perspective, volume, detail, anything on black. And you can't go anywhere from black. So we want to find ways to add at least a little light to it to give some idea of distance and volumes. So we want to just start developing that more and looking at refining some of the shapes and stuff in the dragon. And you can accentuate them too. Like, do dragons really need like pointed vertebrae? Probably not, but they're cool shapes. So let's put some more points on them. It's more dangerous looking. We just put more spiky things on its skeleton. Yeah, cool. So it's making those sort of variations like that too. This is another one, like you see the atmosphere here. We actually get a decent amount of kind of atmosphere going on in your reference photo as well. So we could be coming in with like a linear dodge layer turned down and just start adding in some little atmosphere to try to create a better sense of depth. That his black on the beast isn't quite as black as the foreground black, which gives the idea that he's further away. Yeah. So you just got to keep pushing it. This is one where we do need to cut down on a lot of the black because it is just flattening the image. And this sort of approach to handling it, again, this is very much a lighting thing that kind of bleeds into being a value thing. And it's not necessarily an easy thing. So it might take you a while before you kind of get the hang of the direction it needs to go. But that's okay. It's a really good thing to practice. And you might need to do a couple of variations of it in order to get a system that you feel like works well for you as far as, which colors to use and stuff. You know. I just think this rib cage is maybe a little odd. I have not really looked at what a dragon rib cage is. I think they actually have floating vertebrae, like floating ribs like this. I don't know that they have a sternum. I'm thinking you have a lot more floating ribs, like it connects on the top couple, and then the bottom ones wouldn't be doing that. I was thinking the bottom ones would be more like floating down like that. You got on these guys. Like that sort of thing. Gotta think about where that spine is. And then we're probably, if we have, it's going to be some sort of clavicle. We got to make sure we got like a clavicle in here. And that's why, I don't know, I'm just not, I'd be hesitant about trying to do this because you've really got to know your anatomy. Otherwise, it's going to look kind of janky.
Yeah, it is a little bit more shaped like that one of a bird. So it's a little bit more bulky on the upper part and more narrow, I think, on the lower part. And it's much more outwards. So, yeah, not so flat on the front. It's more rounded, like a bird, once. Yeah.
Okay, keep working on it.
Yep.
Hopefully, Travis, you found something in there that's useful. I try to toss out what I am seeing as the major issues. Not that they're always easy or achievable. Let's see. This is Tyler Vale. Tyler, thanks for always being a part. You've been through a lot of these challenges and just been out on active in the group a lot. Still very much a work in progress, he says, mainly in rendering and detailing. Tried taking it in the direction you said. Not very happy with the human character. I want the piece to be more about the dragon. Okay. I think the dragon in particular is looking quite nice. So I am enjoying that. What was your thoughts on this piece, Anna?
Yeah, I also like the dragon's head. He put a lot of work into it and it looks really good and he rendered it really nicely. I also like the idea with the background being lit. For what I would critique on this one, I think he lost a little bit the really nice silhouette of the dragon he had in his sketch that he submitted 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
Where we could see the limbs, so all of the legs, and here everything is a little bit drowned by the fire that he's, how to say, spit. And his leg is really weirdly attached close to his body. I would get back on the initial idea he had there and work out the silhouette more. So this was my very first thing that came to me when I looked at this one. And the second one is a little bit more on the person. It is a little bit flat. It doesn't have directly light on him, so maybe find a good way to light this person to make him stand out more. And one last thing. With the backlighting, he has a very, very nice opportunity to push further with the wings of the dragon to have nice effects of subsurface scattering. And he missed that opportunity. But it looks really, really good on pieces like this. He should try that. That's basically all.
No, I like that. You just keep talking. I can sit here and eat more chips.
Yeah. I share my screen. I do the paint over. Come on. It's easy as that. No.
Okay. Yeah, the head in particular is looking quite well. Good characteristics. I am applauding the decision of having the normal red scales transitioning to a select group of the black scales. And then changing up the size of those, so you have like little ones. There's an ambulance going by. A set of little ones around the eye, and then the bigger ones around the ends of the jaw and the top of the head. And then you actually inverse those. A lot of people, they only work in the dark, so that the areas between the scales are dark, but the scales are light. And you actually went the other way with the areas in between the scales are light. And doing both, I've done that before in one of my images, and it's a really great way to get a visual look there. I am curious about the posing of the dragon, because we have the original sketch up here. It's basically the same thing reversed, and I don't know where the leg decision went, because I expect to see a leg back here on the other side of his neck. I don't. Yeah, I'm just kind of expecting that to be there. And then we have the claw here, but it's like I'm not sure where that connects. Where does it connect to his body? Is this from the other side? Because if so, I mean, it's either going up and underneath him, or this one is dropping down and I'm out of our sight. Anyway, I think you need to rework that and understand what that anatomy is, because as a viewer, I don't know what it is. And this is getting to be a little too simple. And we want to also look at this turn right here is a little too much. We're probably going to be looking at a turn that is more like that. And this is going to be getting dark down there. And we want to have a difference here where like this is big, and then it kind of gets down to that lighter part of the scales, and then it sort of slims in there. But we also want to continue with this, so it's not just this perfect pattern. Like maybe these stick out at varying degrees. You can kind of see the difference there. Yeah. Okay. Other things that have to do with the shapes. You're right, Anna. The general kind of pose silhouette going on with the dragon in the first version seemed more interesting. Like if you look at these pictures, I think Tyler Jacobson. Is that right? Jacobson, I think, that did this dragon. And wonderful piece. It's a lovely piece. I think it's the one that they use on the D&D, the DM screens that they print for D&D. Nice piece. And good set of shapes. A lot of different shapes going on there. And it also shows you an issue with red, that red is real finicky the way that you light it. Because otherwise, if you don't do it right, you're going to get pink, like what we have here. Which just isn't real threatening for a dragon. So we want to see about maybe handling it a little differently. And that's where these two actually show you two of the good options. Which is one, that you just run it dark, which is essentially what you have for the face. Or you run it so that if it's lit, it doesn't tint cooler, it doesn't tint lighter, it just gets more vibrant. Because you can't get this red any redder. You can't, if I go pick a lighter value of that red and then paint over it, it actually cools it down. It makes it less saturated. So you only max up to red, and then you don't let it go any lighter than that value wise, because then you're losing saturation. But I'm thinking there's a couple of options. And one is we could just use more of this. He just gets dark, right? He doesn't necessarily have to get lighter as he goes away. He can go in the shadow. I don't care. And we also get to do some really cool like shapes. Right? Also want to we need to shade these teeth because they're lit from the inside, not from the outside. And then if we want, we can actually give us a mid-tone behind him. And then use like a white to just be getting these kind of specular light that falls across it. This is also a place where you could have look at some of this information, right? And you can even have some spill light kind of coming over the head there, following some different shapes. If you didn't want it just running into like a black part. I also did this on one of my pieces before. If you want to do like the light through the wing thing, that can be cool. Where we're just getting warm tone, and you're putting that in. And particularly the area that the light is shining through. So basically anything that's thinner gets lighter, anything that's thicker stays dark. And so this part has an actual bone and everything going through it, so it's thickest, so that's going to stay dark. And you could even light that a little bit on this side with just some cool fill light to kind of give it some value like you have on that side. And then you step up into increasingly lighter bands of it as it sort of stretches out towards the you could say that there's maybe a joint across a couple of these spots. And then you can come back in and add wherever your folds are. And the folds are going to be getting thicker, so they are going to be kind of changing that. And then you get patterns of some of it's going like across the spot there. It can be a lot of fun doing this sort of thing, but that might be a nice way to add some extra color, just some cool bits to it, right? And then that gets a lot more of that pop of red. He gets to be more big and menacing. If he doesn't have direct light running through it, then it just immediately drops to shadow, right? And then it's just sort of lost in the shadow. But I'm going to let you really play up some color back there. And I'm almost feeling like this could just be kind of shadowed down there. I also had this image by, this is another image by Jesper Ising, and a lot of similarities here. We could even get it closer by flipping it. So there we go. So looking at the two of these, Anna, what do you see maybe that Jesper is doing in his piece that Tyler might be able to take some cues from and apply to his piece?
I think the most interesting about the piece of Jesper is the usage of the colors. So it's actually what you just said with the reds, how he makes them darker, how he makes them lighter, the subsurface scattering, the little how to say, the cool light that's coming from the top. So and for the fire, I think you didn't get to the fire yet. There is a really nice version on how you can do it. There are so many versions of how to paint fire, but this one would fit the style pretty well for his piece.
You know, with the fire, it might be interesting to play with treating it more graphical. You're using shapes to express how the fire is moving, what the motion is. You're not necessarily trying to make it look realistic, like it's an actual flamethrower sort of fire. But look at the energy that you get out of this. It's really fantastic. And then it also keeps a very perfect spherical form. And then it's very clear that you can almost feel the magic bubble that this guy is protecting himself with. And that could be something we could really implement over here too, is where we have that really clear distinction of where this bubble is, and everything is basically just warping around this shape. And that would keep you from having to do like a really complex layers of fire with smoke kind of coming off of it. This is much more achievable with a lot, I would think, with actually a lot more energy, unless you can do this part really, really well. This is also a good indication of like sometimes that top light coming across can be nice to help develop some of the forms on the top of the head. So we could think about doing, you know, same sort of thing there. And again, like kind of looking at how he's developed some of these wings. This is actually a really good idea here too, which is beating the crap out of those wings and just letting there be like all these holes, and the ends of the wings are all ragged. I love that because of the shapes that it makes. And then it also makes this thing just feel kind of ancient. This thing has just been around a long time, and it has devoured a lot of dudes. So we get some really nice shapes and break up that wing pattern a little bit. And then, like it shows here, this is, it's fantasy colors, right? It's not real, in which case he's developing all of the colors, like bright reds, bright blues, whites, and everything on the character, separate from the fact that it's surrounded by orange light, because it's a painting, right? And so that could be something we do here too, where we could get some colors out of it without him necessarily having to be just a big dark silhouette. Is there anything else? Oh yeah, just looking at the shapes. Look at the shape language. Dragons are one of these things that you can really just push shapes with, and it works just fine. Like everything is a spike or a curve, and everything is just adding to the shape of this thing. And that's what we want to look at, how we can turn every spot into some sort of spike or a big tight piece of sinew or whatever it is. Okay, wrapping it up on that one. And last one, we're going to be taking a look, unless we missed somebody's. Don't.
Ernst. You missed Ernst.
I missed who?
Ernst once. Ernst Eckelson. Eskelson. With the red dragon. Or did we cover? No, we did not cover that one yet.
Did he post it after noon?
No.
Because I saved everything that was there when I looked.
Ernst Eskelson. He was on time.
And then I don't know why I don't have it. Hang on. We do not want to shortchange you, my friend. If you got it in on time,
Yeah,
might have been a technical issue here. Hang on a second. Let me double check my Dropbox folder and see about grabbing that for you. Spring and Dragons Den Finals. Okay, don't know why I have it, but we will drag it over and take a look at it. Let's see, open. Nope. Anyway, some way to download this. Download. Yes. Un momento. Okay, let me flip it back to screen. Cam artwork. Nope, not the right one. Screen webcam. There we go. Oh, I still need to be able to see my YouTube channel. Put it down there. Alright, so Ernst says, in this couple of weeks, a lot of things made me change my plans. First of all, the more I changed the demon into a dragon, the more I realized that the scene wasn't going to work in a portrait mode. Okay, yeah, if you want a horizontal, that's fine. So I changed to a landscape. Recently lost an old and very close friend of mine. I am sorry to hear that. That's always hard. So decided that I want to draw him in the art as a captain leading an army against the dragon. For the dragon, I took for reference some dragons in the MTG that has this lightning power, and this lightning's around him crashes the soldiers nearby. Well, my condolences on your loss, but it seems like this is a very nice way to honor him with the image. And yeah, this is a decided improvement, I think, on the sketch that you sent in. So for those who did not catch it last time, this image right here on the left of the kind of standalone figure there was the concept, and we've made it horizontal. We have pushed kind of the rendering of the dragon, gave him some like armor plates, some glowing horns, expanded his wings out. He's much more menacing this time. We've got a whole group of soldiers here in the foreground, added the lightning effect. Yeah, very cool. Okay. Did you have a chance to take a look at this earlier? Because I did not. Somehow I missed it, so I have not wrote any notes for this.
Yeah, I have looked at it, and I also think that he improved this piece a lot. He decided for a different composition, which is totally fine. We have a very nice foreground, midground, and well, a little bit of background also going on. I felt like the background behind this soldier and his friend that is pointing towards a dragon who's not rendered yet. I bet he's going to go about that later. Is a little bit too empty, so there should be a little bit of silhouetted mountains or anything more of interest that helps us leading the eye towards the dragon. And his wing is a little bit flattening the image, his left wing. He should maybe have it a little bit more angled, a little bit part of it going a little bit more back, have a nice wave, a more dynamic to that wing. To just give this piece a little bit more depth. For my personal taste, I would have gone with an even longer neck, and still the arm feels a little bit human anatomy to me. But if he wants to stick with that, it's fine. It's his decision for design on what he wants to do. I would just look at the references and see how long these arms are and how long the necks are, and adjust it even more. Also, his head design-wise, it's completely his decision, and the horns on his head and the
the head.
The head. Yeah. Oh, sorry, it was my pronunciation. It's late for me, Clint. It is
late for you.
And I need to walk my dog later also, so I'm dying a little bit here. So I wouldn't have made them glow, and the triangled one are a little bit boring in design for me, but it might be a personal taste thing. What form to give them? Like in the references are really nice spiky ones. Maybe he could push that further, and not giving him this antler shape, but more of these spiky designs. But this is a design thing, and also a little bit dependent on taste. That's it. Finished.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you. The neck still seems kind of short. I'm curious about maybe adjusting it so it's a bit more like this, where he just has it curled up and it kind of comes. It's actually higher than his head, and then it comes down to his head, and so we would be. It would actually be coming up and then doing this sort of thing, so it's looping back and then up like that a bit more, and not just straight to the base of the skull like we humans have. So we could get this fin thing, and we could run it up like this. And then we probably want to pull his head out just a little bit, or we want to push the front of his neck back some, so that we can get it coming back there. And get it looping back that way. I'll just take that one out for a moment. If that kind of makes sense, and then you would have that's one coming that way. That would be a little more dragon-like if you're going that direction. The antlers, the idea of some glowing horns, antlers or something, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, like Anna and I have both said, we love glowy stuff. So you're not going to hear us have a problem with that. It's just that shape language isn't really being used anywhere else. And so it's not consistent with the rest of his character. I'd just be curious about maybe just making it almost more like spiky. I'm almost thinking more like a elk antler, where it's got like some big flatter areas that sort of have points that come off of them. And so the head actually, it's like the whole top part sort of blurs into, it becomes this big kind of antler shape that comes up there. And it's got a bit more mass to it, and it's not just these kind of delicate, and maybe that's what it is. This guy is so thick and brutish, but he's got like these really kind of thin, delicate antlers that don't really mesh with that. So I think if you did it kind of like this and you just beefed them up some more, and that can work. And then the other thing is that color isn't really being used, and he's got this wonderful blue lightning. Okay, use it, man. Use the blue lightning. I love that. So I'm just grabbing a color layer, and what if these are like his conduit? So these things have the blue light. And then we have the lightning is basically arcing off of this. He's drawing power from the storm, or he's causing the storm. And then we have, it's just arcing off of this dude. And you got that. I also feel like, and you had mentioned what, like some mountains or something behind the captain character? Was that right, Anna? I think.
Captain? What do
You
you
said
mean?
something about mountains in the background.
Yeah, just to give it a little bit more feeling of depth.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be.
I was thinking, what if we had, like, we have this lightning strike, which is cool, but we can use more of that, where there'd be like another lightning bolt shooting this way, and we have a couple of these lightnings that maybe they go up behind some of these rock ledges, and that kind of gives you a sense of volume where they disappear behind some of these things. And that way you don't have to develop a lot of stuff, but that could be a short way to achieve a lot without having to create a lot of detail that's actually going to end up just kind of being distractive. And so this also just creates a really nice radiating sort of line pattern off of the dragon, is where all these things are sort of arcing off from where he is there. And lightning also is a great way that you can indicate some atmospheres. So like maybe there's some low clouds or something back here, and so any little cloud that lightning is going through is just going to light up like a Christmas tree, and it's going to be this wonderful pop of color back there. And we can use that to help just pull out shapes of whatever rocks and stuff that you want back there. Yeah. And so that would be a neat way to develop it. And then if we kept these blue instead of the orange, then it would allow us to keep it more consistent with the whole color scheme, right? Kind of that sort of thing. Because I really like this idea that coming down and hitting that, but we need to make sure that we are sticking with the blue light coming along the outside of this thing, keeping his glow around all these lightning strikes. This is also another area where we could add a bit more atmosphere. One of the best ways to add atmosphere is make a new lighten layer, set it down a little bit, don't want it usually at 100%. And then I'm going to pick whatever the atmosphere color is, which is kind of this, because it's tinted by the lightning, the blue lightning. And I'm going to throw it over all of this because, again, black does not stay consistent. Black will always, there's always exceptions. Black has a tendency to get lighter as it gets further away. I'm going to now modify it. That's too much, so we're modifying it. And then I'm going to move it down, saturate it up a bit. So there we get the dragon pushed to the background a little bit, not a lot. We're just throwing back there a little bit. maybe just a little too saturated. Yeah. And so I feel like there's a bit more distance now between him and the background. And this is also where we want to switch to being silhouette. All right, so the top part got light on it. Down here, don't worry about developing all that. We don't need all that developed. This is silhouette. And the only thing that you get on this is what you have right here, which is this edge light. We need some cool shapes down the back of that. And then we let things get lightened as it gets further down. It goes up. Yeah, kind of along that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you with the wings as well. The wings are flattening out a little bit. If we showed maybe like part of the wing is getting a little brighter. More it kind of comes up. Even if you just showed some variance in it, kind of like that, then that would help to just give it a little more interest. Or we can do the same sort of thing the other one did, which is even if you just started adding some holes and some more tears and stuff in it, and push that further, then at least the shape of it would be more interesting. And the other thing is, with lightning, you can really do just the best bright edge light, because it doesn't just kind of lighten things. I mean, it is just about the brightest thing there is for as long as it's shooting. And it is shooting almost continually around this guy. So you can get this edge light and just make him pop with kind of what you would call an angelic lighting, where everything that is on that top plane getting lit is just going to be really, really beautiful and bright. See, then he gets kind of, he's not just powerful, like he's more like almost like a deity that's like some sort of mythological deity, like one of the Titans, that sort of thing. Okay. Yeah, we're both assuming that you're going to be developing the soldiers and obviously their design and stuff. But as the dragon was the main feature of the image, perhaps adjusting that. Other thing that you can do is do what they've done there, which is basically brightening the whole sky. Because right now, a lot of the sky and a lot of him are essentially the same value. And it could be really nice to separate the two of them, saying that the sky is getting brightened up. And so that his shape is showing up better against this brighter sky with all the lightning in it. And I think that wing should probably be getting a little lighter than this other wing, since this other wing's a little closer to us. Again, these are just fast changes to kind of show you a real quick direction that you could run the image. let's look at black and white. So like if you look at the black and white of this one, this top one up here, which you can't see on that layer, up here, look at the value difference between the dragon and that background, and that's one of the way the dragon shows up really well. And down here we didn't really have that. If you take that off, you see that the dragon and the background just start really running together, and that's why we either need like a really bright top light that rims him to make him show up, which you're kind of doing the reverse of that one where it's darker back there but he's lighter on his top edge, or you need to do it so that the sky is brighter and then he's darker against it. But you probably don't want to do both, because then you get in a bright background with a bright edge. But you might be able to work it out if you handle the shapes correctly. So, any last thoughts on that one, Anna?
No, I think this looks really, really good now, and I hope it will help Ernst to improve it, and I'm looking forward to the final of this piece.
Me too.
Post it.
We'd like to see it, and also just a nice thing to do for your friend. I'm glad to see that you're doing that. All right, close that. And you're going to be talking us through your piece here. This is Anna's piece that's been talking.
Yeah, it's a very early VIP work in progress. I had a little bit of struggle with finding a good pose for her, because the sketch that I handed in, she felt a little bit stiff to me, and so I experimented a lot with a little bit different angles and tilts and twists in her upper body, and this took me basically the first week, and the second one I just tried to make it work together with the tree, because then the body didn't fit very well with the tree, and I just had one problem after another. And I am now, what I already told you earlier on Skype, that I am now thinking about the lighting, which one to go through, because I want to have a good shading on her body, and make her interesting to look at. But with her being backlit, she would be much more silhouetted. That's why before I posted this one, I put on a levels layer to put out some of her of the higher values, to make a little bit more looking silhouetted. But now I look at it, I already don't like it anymore. I would put off that layer already. But I need some tips on how to go about the lighting. Maybe you have also some color ideas for me, and how to get this nice balance, as I said earlier, with detail and just hinted detail, so that you don't really paint it, but it's readable to the viewer without having to render out every little thing. And I didn't do anything about the background yet. It's still a sketch, yeah. It will get some rim lights from the sunset on the stone and the trees and so on. So I didn't work on that yet.
Okay, in case viewers missed it, this is the original pose with the character kind of coming out of the the tree like this, and I was okay with that. I thought that worked pretty well, but I think what you've come up with is even better. Yeah, this is a better option. So I think the time was well spent there, and with the lighting for this one, there was a lot going on, but ultimately, the thing that I come back to is paint the thing the way you want it, and then justify it. Don't say, well, the parameters tell me this, therefore I have to follow it. No, you're the artist. You paint it however you want to, and then you justify in the image why it is that way. And that lets the image direction dictate the piece, rather than the piece being dictated by the parameters. And in this case, like if you want her lighter, brighter, more colorful, more saturated, okay, then justify why that's that way. Paint it that way, and then add a light on it so that it's that way. If you don't want there to be a rim light on all this stuff, then just don't put a rim light. Just say that the light is not cresting over those trees far enough to hit anything. Nobody's going to check it. Nobody's going to care. People care about if it's pretty and if they like it. People respond to things on an emotional level. They're not detectives. And so just the first thing you got to ask yourself is, what do I want? And now, how can I make that work for the image? So like on her, do you want her brighter? Do you want her more colorful? Do you want her backlit? Do you want her front lit? Because we can answer that, and then we can talk about how to make that work. So if you don't want her backlit, then we just justify the fact that the sun's not over the background trees and she's not backlit. If you want her front lit, then we just make a fictional light that's hitting her. But it's just, if you do that, then just make it consistent. Just make sure that it behaves consistently across the thing that it is hitting. There's a lot of times that people come up with random light sources in images that, if you actually think about it, can't really exist, don't exist. But we don't care because it's just an image, it's a painting.
Yeah, well, I like the idea with the sunrise because it's also pushing the storytelling that she's awakening. So, and also gives me the opportunity to put more color into it. But I would like to combine it with her being still visible. So not just a silhouette, a dark silhouette. That would be my
I've
wish.
handled this sort of lighting before too, and this can totally work. It depends. We just need the right value jumps in between things. So the background is considerably lighter than hers, so she stands out. I was also looking at, like, I downloaded this batch of photos, dawn, sunset photo packs, and I masked out the background. So you could, like, throw in a photo and kind of be like, oh, well, how does that look? Does that seem good to me? Or you could even throw in like a different, like one that's like a color dodge or a screen, and then sort of adjust it if you wanted to layer them up, or you multiply it or whatever. You could shift this around if you wanted to, play around with different colors. And so that might be able to give you an idea of just kind of how to approach some clouds and stuff, and you can just keep the same mask on there and just use different images. And I'm not saying that that's your final, but it might be a nice way to play around with some options that's faster than necessarily just having to paint it all. So you're like, oh, I really like the violet pinky colors. Okay, cool. Anyway, that would be one thing. The rest of it for her, I mean, it seems like you're doing like kind of a top, like a light coming down on her face. Do we want that, or was that just
because it was my initial idea that she's like rising up to that light. She's awakened by that ray of light, so to speak. That was my first initial idea before we came up with the sunrise idea. So I wanted to combine it a little bit to have her being lured out of the tree by light.
Multiply. Let's see. I was thinking that we need a nice value jump, that we could have this stuff being edge lit, could be nice and bright. And then the same sort of thing for these. These are being backlit. They're going to get brighter. we want these pops of colors. We really want just a lot of color from her, right? And that means we get like these, and then everything. When you backlight flowers, you just get the most wonderful colors. And even the greens start popping out a lot. You get like these really bright greens, and this is where you like, it's not completely opaque. I mean, you got like light filtering through there and stuff. And so we get pops of light kind of coming through there. And then we would need to continue some of that like around in here. That's not the right color. It's more of a sunrise sort of pinky color. But on her, we would also need a light source that, like, do we want it really bright like this one, like your reference image on the left? With that bright?
Not that much, I'd say. It maybe a little bit less, so it should look a little bit more natural. Yeah. Because the one in the style direction is like lightweight coming into a very dark cave. And so it's a huge contrast, but she is already pretty much out there in light, so I think the contrast shouldn't be as much.
Because we could use a exposure layer to just approximate some light falling across her. And then if we want her face showing up because it's got some of the top light coming down on it, then we just need to make sure that this has like some nice violet sunrise tone back there that still has plenty of colors, still registers sunrise, but value-wise, it's going to be darker than her lit face. Right, and then more of the kind of warmer sunrise colors could be a bit further down. And so we're letting her break kind of the top there a little bit. And then that way we have kind of like a top light, and then we also have a back light. Yeah, I might tone that one down a little bit. Yeah. And it depends like how much of the light you want coming down on her from that top view. Not top one.
Yeah, basically yeah. So I think the way you have it like now, it's not brighter than that. So, but I would now think about what is the light source of that. So is this magic, or there is for me no explanation to where that strong light from the top comes from, and that would bother me. We don't care. It would bother me.
No. We're not scientists. We don't really care where it's come from. Just that it's making everything behave correctly. And so we're getting like a lot of contrast here. I think we probably could come in here and soften out a lot of this contrast. If we have the light this bright, we don't necessarily need it so dark. You know, like we have like bright reds and almost blacks there. We don't necessarily need that. Yeah, this one's going to be a good challenge for you because you like everything to be very purposeful and everything has to follow a very specific reason why it is one way and not another.
Yes.
And so we have light down on her. If we want to, we can do like some stuff in the air. That's catching a little light too if you want to establish that. But it does need to fall somewhere else. Like, it does need to be able to fall on the tree as well. And so the tree is catching some of the light. That arm would be catching some of the light. Then everything in the shadow is going to be kind of cooling down because it's going to be catching mainly the same cool light that everything else is. Just a little bit. I'm curious about even taking this further with some of the tree light. Like maybe it's actually coming up all the way from the roots into the glow through the tree. And if it was me, I would be also putting like flowers blooming out around her, like coming up the vines around her. You've got like flowers coming out here, and you've got just coming kind of growing up off of the tree near her. And is that anything you were thinking about as well, or?
Yeah, I also tried it to add like flowers where her hand touched the tree, but I did not know how to, yeah, how to do the rendering because I didn't want to do it too detailed like I did with the hair. I feel like I failed with the hair because I did like do it too detailed.
That was a little detailed, yeah.
And I did yeah, a bit, and yeah, I did some blotchy things and with brushes, and I tried to be a little bit more loose, and but it didn't turn out like I wanted it to be, so I ended up deleting it later on. So that's why I only have these plain wines. Yeah.
We'll just have some big roses coming off of the tops of each of these. Yeah. Lovely. With these sort of flowers, one of the things that you can think about is you're basically creating a really simple gradient. I actually went over this in a consult last week. And so say that you have like a flower over here and that you mainly just put it in as a little block. And then part of it is violet, and then the other part gets to maybe a brighter orange in the middle. And then each one is a little gradient. Maybe it's brighter at the top, dark, some other color at the bottom. Maybe it's inside to outside, outside to inside, whatever it is. And then you just come in with a couple of strokes and that are towards the dark, and just kind of establish like a little pattern for leaves. And then each one of these leaves gets to be kind of its own little color. And yeah. So you're just looking at creating a little, and the same thing is like, your leaf patterns is kind of broken, almost like a ripple on the top, doing this, right? And so, yeah, just go around and look at each one and create some sort of pattern. Maybe it's white in the middle. Okay, cool. So that one's blue, and it's got like a white in the middle, and then it just has these little pestils coming out. Then the edges get darker as they go out, and so it just has this really simple gradient. And that it works together really well. I'm trying to think who shared that image that it was done good with. Oh, well, actually, I can pull that up. If my mouse... Okay, my mouse big right here, not see anything. Hang on. Nope, wrong one. There we go. That was... because it was a good illustration of how to render things without having to just go real crazy detail. Now this is Victoria, this name, and from ArtStation. You've probably seen this before. Lovely image. That's also one that you might look at. So you notice like on these, they are basically every one of these is just a simple gradient. Like this flower is basically a cone that is darker on the bottom. Then it gets lighter as it goes up. And that's its basic pattern. And then it just has the few flower petals that are shaded in that looping sort of spiral pattern. Then there is just a spot or two that has some extra bright light catching it as it comes up. And that's basically how those patterns work. And each one of these is essentially just a little gradient block where, you know, this guy is kind of that, but it's basically more orange yellow in the middle. Then there's just the white pattern where he goes around and draws in some of the tops of those. And that's kind of all you need with yours, because yours are going to be extra tiny. These are like right up in the camera, and you know they're much more visible. Okay, more thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. For the top light, when it's hitting the tree, what areas would I have the light on the tree? Because I don't want to put it on the bottom, because I want it to be more shady area there. So where should I put then the light to make it look realistic but still believable that the lower part of the tree doesn't receive the light?
Oh no, we could just be treating it like basically it's a pretty focused light. It has a very small spread, and it's just kind of hitting her upper body. There might be some hitting just kind of like right there on the left side, on that tree right to her left side. Maybe just a little bit on the tree behind her. But yeah, I wouldn't have any problem thinking that the bottom of the tree doesn't have any of the light falling on it. Yeah.
Okay.
And for the rest of it, I mean, I'd be thinking also in terms of planes. I think this is somewhere where you could really play up that gradient of the light to dark pattern, where you have the bottom of these back trees get lighter, and then it goes up, and they look like they get darker against the sunrise. And then you have the cliffside. Yeah, I think you could easily lose a bunch of time trying to render all this stuff, and it just isn't really necessary. And then the bottoms of each plane get lighter towards the bottom. And then the next plane gets darker at its top. And so you can just keep stepping through each of them. These might be more violet back there. And each plane gets slightly lighter as it goes back. I'm just trying to think how to keep most of the attention on the character, because if we start developing like a lot of information on these background stuff, then it's going to be really easy to lose a lot of time and actually lose a lot of attention on the character. So if we can just keep each plane having kind of its own value scheme, in that it loses the kind of value and color as it goes back, and let the little gradient patterns play off of each other, then we could keep it more simplified and it have a sense of depth as it goes back. I don't know if that follows at all what you were thinking with the image.
So yeah, I was going to add a lot of atmosphere for the background. Do you think then that all the snow shapes will then be too much detail? Because I want to make sure that people understand it's still winter in that forest.
I think the
So I,
snow can show up just fine, but it's like you're almost just painting the snow. Everything else is going to be too diffused and too much of the same value. So you're kind of just saying everything with just the snow, if that makes sense. You're basically working in two values. The snow is one value, and then everything else is another value.
yeah.
You can also do. You also can do like radiating. You do get God rays during sunrise and sunset, so that is one of those times that you could really play this sort of thing up. Of that coming across there, and even if you wanted to like glaze more of this color over that background, be that sort of thing. This is like spring superstar.
It looks cheesy.
Yeah. And we have some groupies in the background, and
Yeah,
we need
I
like
see.
a flock of doves flying around, taking off. Yeah. Love and peace and spring and everything. Woo-hoo. Then we could just curve the tree to make like a big heart. Yeah. Yeah, see, there we go. Now it works on all kinds of levels. We're like, oh, it's all about peace and happiness and nature. Look at that. See?
Wonderful. I'm gonna do it exactly like that
Yeah, the
with the
stream has
heart shape.
definitely not been running too long.
No,
It's only been 4 hours. Why am I getting all
yeah.
loopy?
Am I still awake? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think we got to wrap it up. We can talk about this one later.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, thank you so much for joining. If you've lasted the whole time, my gosh, what are you doing with your life? But thank you for joining us. And of course, you can join us out on the Swatches group. Just go to swatches.group and ask to join out there. You can catch me out there. You can catch Anna out there. And if you want to get part of the Tomb of the Sphinx challenge, pick up a ticket tomorrow at swatchesart.com. And I will catch you guys later. So until then, keep drawing.
Bye bye.